I would just like to speak today. I'm a Margot Griswold, a restoration ecologist with over 25 years experience in Southern California and throughout California. I've worked on the West Bluffs project, designed and oversaw implementation on the restoration of the bluffs. And before that, worked on some aspects of water, fresh water, in regard to McGuire Thomas, the previous developer of the Playa Vista area. So I have some knowledge of the area, and I would just like to say that I am dismayed that in the alternatives for the project, that no alternate to the 3 full tidal wetlands was offered. So first of all, it's a violation of CEQA, but we won't get into that here. I would just like to say that the design of the project, the top-down science advisory panel, and what has gone on is against all things I ever learned in my experience, in my training, and in my implementation of successful projects in California. The Ballona Wetlands project is not a restoration. None of those current alternatives focus on the vegetation or wildlife, nor optimal benefits to those wildlife historically and currently present. The published science indicates that Ballona Wetlands was not a historic full tidal marsh, and its natural closing patterns and the historic data are documented in recent publications from 2011. This has been pointed out repeatedly to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, but there is never a change in the project. The plan also ignores regional patterns of loss in coastal wetlands. So coastal wetlands are more than just full tidal wetlands. And you see here in a study from North San Diego County, which you could extrapolate up the coast if you're knowledgeable about Orange County, the loss of salt marsh, about 12%. The loss of salt flat, seasonally flooded salt pan is 90%. And the loss of freshwater brackish marsh is 54%. But look, we have an increase in open water mudflats of 615%. So historically, we're out of whack and we're not considering what could be good for the region. We don't want to homogenize any more of our coastal wetlands. This is Ballona after the rains this year. Okay, fresh water, as you can see from these photos. This is what can happen with fresh water. Here are the areas of the non-permitted drains taken before capping. You see weedy areas of dry annual grasses. After 3 years, here's what you're seeing: pickleweed, a wetland plant. And I would just like to end with this photo. Here's the Pacific Ocean, here's Marina Del Rey, and here's the Ballona flood control channel. Leave it a flood control channel. You can't change what's there. If you really want to clean up Ballona flood control channel, usually it's common to start at the upper watershed. And I would say, I don't know any project to combat sea level rise that takes soil away and lowers the land. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your comments.
The presenters tonight are Margot Griswold with Jonathan.
There are tidal waters and organisms already within the old Ballona wetlands. Jonathan's photographed the tiger beetle, which is on the mudflats, and killifish over in Area A at the Fiji Slough. Fiji Slough with some egrets in the water, a missed opportunity. Why can't we use what we find in an efficient way? Opening up Area A and B north to tidal flows will not protect existing species against sea level rise. So here's Marina Del Rey, open. Here's Area A, B, and C. So opening this up, if we're to believe the EIR, will protect the species from sea level rise. But this would be the only study I've found that proposes to dig out a wetland, coastal wetland, to protect it from sea level rise, to dig it out and make it lower than current sea level. So this seems to be an inconsistency. Within the document, they actually state that they'll remove between 2 and 3 million cubic yards, it's a lot, of soil. And they will use most of that soil to create large new levees and berms. But they reserve the right, and this is in a couple of studies that I've read from 2012 on to the current EIR. They reserve the right to actually use soil that they've taken out to put it back for building up the wetlands once they've allowed the ocean to come in. So to me, that's an inconsistency. Here's the plan, and these are the changes as we go through the years. Walter Lamb presented this in his presentation a few weeks ago, where you see the orange again is all upland. The light green is low marsh. Dark green is mid-marsh. Well, mid-marsh has gone to low marsh in just a few years, with sea level rise predicted. And it continues that way. Now, the low marsh is mudflat, and we continue with low marsh taking over high marsh. And finally, we're getting really less and less diverse in habitats as the mudflats take over. And here we are in 2100. So you see it's gone from our salt marsh, low, mid, and high, to open water and mudflat. And where did all the species go that were there? Well, the Belding savanna sparrow that Jonathan captured here in Area B in the pickleweed likes to have a rather wide band to nest, to mate, nest, set up their territories. So that very narrow band that you see developing by 2050 means likely that we're not going to have Belding savanna sparrow there. So we're not even protecting our one of our listed species. We certainly aren't protecting anything else. We're changing the entire system. to say nothing of the inconsistency with the state of California's groundwater management plans to allow saltwater intrusion into aquifers. And these aquifers were given short shrift in the final EIR, the draft EIR as well. No real hydrology studies were done. Hydraulic studies on the creek, but no real hydrology study, and they refer to a few studies, but they don't refer to some of the more recognized groundwater studies. So it's an inconsistency. Also, this is recent, just 2 Sundays ago, I saw the a tsunami risk for Los Angeles County had been updated by the California Geologic Survey. And so I thought, oh, I wonder what that looks like for the Ballona Wetlands. So here we have Marina Del Rey. So you see that it's all the boat slips and edges are at risk. So the yellow means at risk from tsunami. Here's the Ballona flood control channel. And so it's at risk up to just beyond the 90 and a little into the Centinela Creek. But you notice area A, area C, area B is not at risk. But I think if we dig it out, as they did with Marina Del Rey, remember, Marina Del Rey was part of the wetland, part of the salt marsh. And this is what happens when you dig out a salt marsh, a coastal marsh, protected by a double dune system, and open it up to the ocean for tsunami. And I'm guessing sea level rise. Well, we saw that. In their own EIR, they projected what happens with sea level rise. But this is something I'm not sure they looked at in the document itself. But what are the risks to the wetlands and all the access paths and trails and such when a tsunami comes in once they've lowered this area? So it's just another inconsistency that I see. And inconsistency and missed opportunities in terms of water, rather than lowering the wetlands to receive tidal flow every day, why aren't we using the water that's there? So here we have seasonal rainfall. This is what Ballona looks like. We also have water that's being dumped, a tremendous amount of water that Patricia McPherson has documented is being dumped into Ballona Creek from the Playa Vista development in order to keep all their gas monitoring situations viable, and they dump that water out. But that water is an opportunity. That water should be in the Ballona Wetlands. And with that water, we could have, more vegetation, more opportunity for wildlife. This is just a photo that encapsulates a couple of inconsistencies with the final EIR. Besides the hydrology and vegetation is the baseline. So this was in 2012, Jonathan discovered these drains. If you look here in the left upper, where my pointer is, these drains are in the ground, so they're draining at the surface, but they're also draining about 6 feet down. They have weep holes on them, so they're draining any soil water. So this is a photo of the drain that's in the south area. These drains were not permitted. They were put in over 20 years ago. And so they've been draining. And this is what they base their existing conditions on this side. This is what I saw last year, 3 years after capping. This is pickleweed. Here we see a little pickleweed here. This is all annual grasses, all the way over to the berm. And here you see the berm in my photo. A little different lens than what Jonathan was using. So this came from the rainwater not being drained and the groundwater not being drained. So there's the opportunities we're talking about. And here's just where these unpermitted drains are in Area B, north. And Patricia McPherson again, the Coastal Commission acknowledged the drains had to be capped, and that thus they were capped. But one still wonders why those drains are there. They're draining and they're joining the drain from the freshwater marsh that's taking the water from Playa Vista and dumping it into the Ballona Creek flood control channel. Why is the question? Why did they put these drains in? We've heard that they don't really drain anything, but I still have the question, that's a real inconsistency. I don't know very many people that would pay to have those drains put in if they weren't going to actually drain water. Another inconsistency is the placement of fill from Marina Del Rey. And this is the basis for the project claiming they need to take this 2 to 3 million cubic yards of soil because all of A was covered in fill from the marina. Now remember that fill, that dredged material was good wetland soil placed in Area A. This is from a document of the Playa Vista EIR, and it shows the location of artificial or deposited fill. So these areas that are crosshatched is where the fill was. Undisputed that there's fill in Area C, but Area A, yes, there's some on the edges, but in general, this central area is not filled, and none in Area B. So I believe Dr. Dave Jacobs, commented on this briefly in his presentations, because this type of wetland that is closed is also perched, so it's higher than one would expect, and we think that they just have made an error here. But they're sticking with it. They're going to remove a lot of soil and make large berms in place of what they already have. There are levees that hold the water from the Ballona flood control channel just fine. But they're going to make larger berms and tear up the whole place. This is Hordeum depressum, a rare grass found in wet meadows, coastal meadows. And Jonathan found this in the middle of Area A, where supposedly 10 to 20 feet of fill from the marina had been placed.